Nice to have you here. Krishna, welcome. Did I speak to you by perchance? I did. And then I gave you his number. Okay. I was just, because your voice sounded familiar now, so that's how I caught it. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishnapastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminati Namine Namaste Saraswat Devam Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadim Paschate Desatarine Om Ajnanatimrandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitamena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishyakanvitamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyev cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Nityananda Vadutendur Vasudha Prana Vallabha Janava Jivitapati Krishna Prema Prada Prabhu Padmavati Sutta Shriman Sachinandana Purvajah Bhavon Matta Jagatratha Rakta Gaura Kalevaraha Namo Namo Aniruddhaya Hishikesha Indriyatmane Namah Paramahamsaya Purnaya Nibrutatmane Swarga Pavarga Dwaraya Nityam Suchi Sade Namah Namah Hiranyaviryaya Chaturhotraya Tantave. So, Hare Krishna. So, we stopped at the third chapter last week. We concluded the third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and we have to begin the fourth. But before we begin the fourth, let's just get some continuity as to what was accomplished in the first three chapters, and then we'll get to understand as to what we would be doing in the fourth chapter. Right. So, in the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, we start out with a scenario which is extremely complex. It is complex because it's a battlefield, and in battlefields you take very complex decisions, because every decision in a battlefield is either you protect yourself or you're going to be killing someone. It's one of those. So it's a very serious scenario. So that's the first chapter. And you see intense mental suffering in Arjun in the first chapter. That is being seen there because he is perplexed. He is perplexed as to his priorities. He is perplexed as to his duties. He is trying to figure out how he should be carrying out and what order, who should be given a priority. Now, he is facing a very complex decision. He is facing a complex decision because, as every one of us, he is also someone who has many identities. Right? He is a grandson, he is a disciple, he is a brother, he is a nephew, and he is the servant of God, which is the most important identity. He has all these identities which he is facing problems with, and he is standing right there in the battlefield. In one sense, if he has to follow the orders of Krishna, he has to kill his grandfather, which would go against his relationship with his grandfather. So now you have a very complex web of decisions that have to be taken on which order and which duty do I fulfill. Do I fulfill the identity of being a grandson, whereby I become respectful to my grandfather, I do not shoot arrows. I just abide by his instructions and step down and so on and so forth. Should I even kill my guru? Because it is guru aparad. It's unheard of. It's a very contradictory situation. It goes against dharma. So now you also have a situation where Krishna, who is the supreme person, is instructing him, saying, you carry out orders based on dharma, you carry out my orders. Now, which order is he supposed to follow? It's a complex situation. And there's intense mental suffering in the first chapter. What do we learn from that? Mental suffering has its use. Intense mental suffering and intense situations in life have the power to eliminate clutter. You are able to prioritize better if you have some intensity in life. If life is complacent, the saying goes that spiritual life and complacency go ill together. It does not go well together. It goes ill together because when life is complacent, we take decisions in a slower pace, and our prioritization of activities, prioritization of time is also not proper. Have you noticed that you accomplish a lot more on days where you have a lot more which needs to get done? If you actually see that, even for a spiritualist, an active spiritualist who has sadhana, let us say for instance you have Janmashtami. Janmashtami is a day of full fast. You have services to perform, yet you are supposed to do your sadhana because it's the most important day of the year. Right? On those days you find that you do get it done in a far more efficient manner. You're up early, you're planning, you're thinking about what needs to be done next, and every hour becomes important because you don't have much left. So now there is intensity, and intensity is allowing you to separate the clutter. You're able to see in a more focused manner. You start prioritizing. You're saying, this is the first priority, I've got to take care of it. Now, that is the same situation with Arjun. In the first chapter, he has to prioritize, and mental suffering is assisting him in prioritizing. Right. So in the second chapter, what did we see? Krishna fundamentally wanted Arjun to be able to examine each one of his identities. He says, you have identities based on the body, you have identities based on the mind, and you have an identity based on you, the soul. Let's prioritize. In the second chapter, Krishna dissects Arjun's existence. He says, you are not this body, Arjun. You are not this mind. You're not intelligence. You are the spirit soul. In the second chapter, in the beginning, he starts dissecting Arjun's existence. Now, once our existence starts becoming dissected, then you start looking at priorities in terms of identities and relationships associated with different layers of existence. One layer of existence is your physical layer of existence. I am known by a certain name. I have a certain identity. I appear in a certain way. Right? This is my physical existence. I have relationships based on this body. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm a son. I'm a professional. There are so many different identities that are being formed purely based on this body. So now you have a physical layer. This is being dissected, being separated, saying, yes, you have identities, you have features based on the physical body. There are duties associated with that. Keep those duties in one basket. Now start looking at the subtle layer. In the subtle body is the mind, intelligence, and the false ego, and the soul. This is the subtle body. The subtle body is what is called a ghost. It's a ghostly body. It's a subtle body that is separated from the gross body. Right? Now you have a gross body, you have a subtle body. The subtle body travels from one lifetime to the other, passing from one gross body to the other. So it has many samskaras. It captures a lot of information along the way. In this lifetime, in the past, whatever experiences we have gone through, we have captured those experiences and we are aware of it. But then our mind does not only have the experiences of this lifetime, our mind is an aggregate of all the experiences that we have had for millions of lifetimes. Can you imagine how complex our situation is? Our thinking process is going through a complex web that has been created over several lifetimes, not just this lifetime. Who we are today is an aggregate of decisions, impressions on the consciousness over several lifetimes. So Krishna is separating the mind. He's saying, you're not this body, you're not this subtle body, mind, intelligence, false ego. You are a spirit soul. Now let us look at duties for the spirit soul, duties related to the body, duties related to the mind. Let's prioritize. Right. So that's what the Bhagavad Gita is all about. So in the first chapter and the second chapter, you are fundamentally seeing Arjuna facing an identity crisis. He has multiple identities just as every one of us do. And we have duties associated with all these identities and we have to prioritize. He is facing a crisis and he's trying to prioritize. Right? Now, when it comes to the third chapter, we start talking about Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga essentially is a situation where you are now beginning to understand that you are a spirit soul. Krishna has made that clear in the second chapter. And in Karma Yoga is fundamentally understanding that you are a spirit soul. And what is the nature of the spirit soul? What is the duty? It is a servant of Krishna. You can never be happy. We can never be happy unless we serve the Lord. There can be no happiness whatsoever. There cannot be. By nature, when we really, what we are looking for is love. And love essentially means there's a component of service. You cannot say that you are in love with someone unless you are serving them in one way or the other. So what we are seeking is love. We are seeking love in different layers of our existence without realizing that what we are really looking for is love at the deepest layer. Right. So at the deepest layer, when we start looking for love, we are looking for love which is connected to the divine couple. We want to connect with them through service and experience the loving exchanges that come forth when we establish a relationship with God. When that is not done, we feel frustrated because every other relationship is based on the body. Now in the third chapter, it starts getting unearthed, right? In the third chapter, we start recognizing that we are a spirit soul. I have duties to perform and I need to prioritize. But then we are also complexed. We are complex because I am a family man, as I said before, right? I'm a professional. And I also have Krishna. Now, how do I prioritize and keep Krishna right in the center while taking care of everything else efficiently? That is the third chapter. In most cases, what we do is we are searching for Krishna and we bring Krishna in at a time when we have already created a very complex environment for ourselves. We have created a very complex environment for ourselves because over the years we have planned and we have prioritized. We have created a complex environment. We may have financial dependency, many artificial dependencies that unless you have a job, you cannot pay for this. Right? It was not so back in our fathers' times or grandfathers' time that everything was connected with one job, and one job goes and everything goes. It's finished. You're on the road. It was very different. People had a different kind of lifestyle. Priorities were different. But right now, our situation is so complex that everything is connected to making a livelihood. And if that gets jeopardized, everything else gets jeopardized. Now, every time we try and bring Krishna right into the center, we have a challenge because our complex arrangements, they take priorities and push Krishna out of the way. Every time we bring Krishna in, you have the complex arrangements coming in and taking place, and then they come in and take precedence. And what happens when we have a complex situation? Let us assume that there is a struggle economically. There's an economic struggle in a family, for instance. Right? What will be going on in the minds of people? Simple. Because there would be an extraordinary focus on what is missing. There would be an extraordinary focus on, I need this to survive. I need this to survive. I should be able to pay my rent. I should be able to pay this, pay that. There would be an unamounted, unprecedented amount of focus on something that most people take for granted. So in such circumstances, who is in the center? Yeah, the need for resources comes to the center. Right? In such circumstances, the need for resources is coming right to the center. And what is it which is going on in their hearts at all times? What are they desiring? The problems to be resolved. They are desiring that the problems needs to be resolved. So there really cannot be a place for Krishna in in such a complex circumstance where you have so many priorities taking precedence and then sitting right in the center. It becomes very difficult for them. So that's the complexity that we face, and that's the reason why there are instructions in the third chapter about how do you manage this complexity. You have created such artificial dependence. You have created an environment which is not tenable, which cannot endure, which is going to constantly challenge you. How are you going to be able to manage to keep Krishna in the center constantly? That is the third chapter. How do you, where are you today? And what is the reason of why you are today? You are here today because you took a series of decisions over several lifetimes, and that has brought you here today. Wherever we are today, who am I today, who are you today, is an aggregate of decisions that have been taken in the past. We took a series of decisions in the past, and here's where we are. A snapshot of our life today is decisions taken in the past. Now, when there is a tremendous amount of need, which is going to be based on I need to meet this basic need of eating and sleeping, then again, decision making is not going to be based on the needs of the soul, it's going to be based on the priorities of the body. How can I sleep today and how can I eat today? You start taking decisions based on that. You start deprioritizing the existence. Right? So how do we manage this? How do we manage this? First of all, there has to be a realization. The first realization that has to come to us goes back to my previous statement. Who you are today is the decisions that you took in the past. It's very simple. So there is a future, because the decisions that we take today can make a better future. If the past decisions have brought us to a complex situation today, then current decisions that we take can create a better future. There's hope. So how do you take decisions today which will allow us a better future, where we don't end up focusing on something which does not need that kind of focus and should not be that difficult? How do we take a decision today? So every decision that we took 10 years back is basically reflected in our existence today. So why can't we take decisions today which will be reflected 10 years hence? See, the Bhagavad Gita is about management. The Bhagavad Gita is about motivation. It is the greatest motivational tool, the greatest book ever for motivation, ever. The reason why we're making this statement is the Bhagavad Gita motivated Arjuna to actually pick up bows and arrows and fire and kill his own relatives. Do you understand? The amount of understanding and depth of philosophy which aided such a complex decision in such complex situations. Why cannot this motivate us in our circumstances, which are nowhere near complex as Arjun's was? So Arjun had to take a few decisions then, very tough, hard decisions, even though they were difficult, based on the priorities and the needs of the soul. Similarly, we have to prioritize the needs of the soul today and take decisions, and these decisions 10 years hence, you will see 1 year hence, 5 years hence, will reap its own benefits. Just as much as what we were 10 years back is making us pay a price today, good and bad. We are yielding good results and bad results based on the decisions that we took 10 years back. So if we take decisions today which are based on the needs of the soul, that soul which is a part and parcel of Krishna and which only desires service to Krishna, right? Then we would be able to see a future 10 years hence which would be far more powerful than we have today. Very powerful future. In other words, life and desires can be managed. There is freedom, there is free will. Free will allowed you to come here on a Thursday evening. You had free will. You took a decision saying instead of spending time at home or doing something else, you could walk in here. So there has been an exercise of free will, which means that it's wonderful because you have the opportunity now to be able to take decisions. Now let's understand the third chapter in relationship to devotional service. I've given you a background as to how we have arrived at the third chapter. In the third chapter, fundamentally, you're learning how to prioritize and keep Krishna in the center. How can I take a decision today where 10 years hence, 5 years hence, 50 years hence, I will have no regrets? So the decision is being taken based on the needs of the soul. And what is the need of the soul? The need of the soul is to connect with Krishna. That's a fundamental need. So if I focus on the need of the soul, that my soul, my existence, the core of who I am, wants to connect with Krishna, right? Pure devotion, that's the definition. Anya Bilashita Shunyam. Anya Bilashita Shunyam. Anya Bilasha is, I have no other motivation. Shunyam, zero. Anya Bilashita Shunyam. Jnana Karmadi Anavritam. Jnana Karma Adi Anavritam. 3 words. Jnana Karma Adi. Jnana, just the pursuit of knowledge for the sake of knowledge, right? Karma, activity which is just going to yield fruitive desires, which are going to give pleasure to the body, to the senses. Anavritam, Adi, yogic pursuits for power, yogic siddhis and so on and so forth. Adi, can talk about so many different other activities. Anavritam, completely free of. Anya Abhilashita Shunyam, Jnana Karmadi Anavritam, Anukulyena. And what is Anukulyena? Anukulyena means favorable. Anukulyena Krishna Anushilanam. Anukulyena, favorable. Because Kamsa and the demons in Braja also rendered service to Krishna. They gave him pleasure. Dhenukasura, Pralambasura, the different asuras in Braja whom Krishna killed, the demons, who challenged Krishna, who spoke Shishupal, who insulted Krishna. They gave pleasure to Krishna. Krishna is transcendence. Krishna is Samambonam. He is Satchit Ananda. When Krishna is playing the flute, he is playing on the banks of the river Yamuna. He is actually stealing butter. He is experiencing intense pleasure. Ananda. He is the source of all Ananda. He is the Samambonam. He experiences great Ananda even while killing the demons. Apparently, when he is angry and his eyes are red and he is challenging and so on and so forth, he is still experiencing intense pleasure. There is absolutely no diminution of pleasure in Krishna's activities. Not that when he is killing the demons, he experiences less pleasure. He is there, he is experiencing more pleasure. Right? But now the demons are reacting and they are interacting with Krishna. And how are they interacting with Krishna? Is it favorable? It is unfavorable. They are constantly thinking about Krishna. Kamsa was constantly meditating on Krishna. Krishna, he is going to kill me. He is going to kill me. He is going to kill me. I hate him. Let me send this demon. Let me send that personality to kill Krishna. This constant, intense focus of Kamsa on Krishna, right, was intense focus. But it was unfavorable. Pratikul, right? It was not anukulyena. Anukulyena is favorable, where there is a favorable intention of wanting to serve Krishna in the mood of a servant, in the mood of a friend, in the mood of parental love, in the mood of, conjugal love. These are anukulyena, favorable. Anukulyena Krishna Anushilanam. What is anukulyena Krishna Anushilanam? Anu means to follow. So Anushilanam is to follow. Where we follow and we focus on the desires of Krishna. Favorably focus on the desires of Krishna and give pleasure to Krishna's senses. This is the definition of pure devotion. The soul, which is every one of us here, will not be satisfied until the soul is able to render quality of service to Krishna as defined by this verse. This verse from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu has been written by Srila Rupa Goswami, who is the foremost Acharya in the Gaudiya Vaishnava Parampara. He was a disciple of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally instructed him. He had the fame, or rather the name, and he was given this particular verse in praise of Srila Rupa Goswami was Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitamena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Essentially meaning that Sri Rupa Goswami understood the heart of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He understood his heart. Right? He understood his heart. This is the actual earning of pure devotees. And devotees who are aspiring and who are on the pure platform, they are constantly begging Lord Chaitanya, allow me to render service to you. Let me have no other distraction. Let me have no other distraction. Let me not think of anything else. Sarva upadi vinirmuktam. Sarva upadi. What is the meaning of upadi? Covering. Upadi essentially means dress. Sarva upadi, designations, identities. Vinirmuktam. Sarva upadi vinirmuktam. I want to be able to serve you and I want to retain only one identity, which is I want to be your servant. I do not want any other identity. If any other identity is imposed on me, let it be subservient. Let it render and let it support my primary identity of being your servant. This is the begging of pure devotion. This is the definition of pure devotion. Where Srila Rupa Goswami has very clearly said, Jnana karmadhi anavritam. We want to throw away the pursuits of fruitive desires. We want to throw away the pursuit of knowledge for the sake of knowledge. Right? I am interested in rendering service to you, which is favorable. And without this, the soul can never be satisfied. The soul can never be satisfied. It cannot be satisfied. There would always be an earning without being able to render service at this platform. Of having no other identity other than being Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya's servant. No other identity. So this is the platform where the soul becomes happy. So the whole process of Bhakti Yoga is for us to be able to reach a point where we are 100% focused on the identity of being Krishna's servant. And this does not mean that we're going to neglect our existence in any other way. When you have the ability to become Krishna's servant, and you're focusing on the core of your existence, every other decision that's going to be taken would be supremely, useful, or supremely, it would probably be the best decision you've ever taken. Most favorable. Most favorable. Because you see, you can never ever claim that you have taken the right decision in life when you have not understood the core of your existence. It is almost like saying, I am in amnesia and I'm somehow taking big decisions in life while I'm in amnesia and hoping that it's somehow going to be wonderful for me. How is it going to work out? So someone who has not understood the craving of the soul and its need for love and the fact that the soul can only be satisfied by coming in touch with Krishna, such a person is taking decisions in the blind. So the definition of pure devotional service is where you are taking decisions 100% based on giving pleasure to Krishna, which is the platform of the soul. It does not mean that pure devotional service you should stop eating. It does not mean that in pure devotional service you stop existing. It does not mean that pure devotional service cannot be performed in New Jersey. You can be employed and you can perform pure devotional service. Remember, this message was given to Arjun. Arjun was not a sadhu, quote unquote, was living in a cave. Arjun was an emperor. Can you imagine what it is to be an emperor? That you walk into the courtroom and you have 100 people, 1,000 people getting up, paying obeisances to you. Everyone is calling you an emperor of the world. Right? We don't have such titles to manage. We don't have such identities that are clashing with our ability to serve. Right? So this message was not meant for someone who is in the cave. This was meant for people like us, who are leading lives which are far less complex than Arjun's life. He was an emperor of the world. How complex could that be? And he was rendering pure devotional service. So that is the motivation of the scripture. That is the motivation of the Bhagavad Gita as well. In the first 3 chapters, you're taught very clearly that unless you reach the platform of pure devotional service, where you keep the needs of the soul to the forefront, and then you start acting based on the needs of the soul. Every other decision is taken which would reinforce the need of the soul. What is the need of the soul? What do I really want? How do you start Bhakti Yoga? You start Bhakti Yoga by what? Ado Shraddha. You have a little faith. Having a little faith allows you to come in the company of those with greater faith. Having a little faith allows us to come in the company of those with greater faith. You come in the company of those with greater faith, and then you start practicing like they do. See, for millions of lifetimes, we have been pretending to be what we are not. We have been pretending to be men. We have been pretending to be women. We have been pretending to be Indians, Americans. We have been pretending to be professionals. We have been pretending to be so many things other than us being servants of Krishna. This has been happening for millions of lifetimes. Now, the whole process of sadhana bhakti is where we are going to break this pretense and we are going to get back on track. The whole process of sadhana bhakti is where we are going to break this pretense and we're going to get back on track. By doing what? We're going to start pretending to be devotees. Right. For millions of lifetimes, we have been pretending to be what we are not. We have been focusing on aspects of our existence which are meaningless. But once we come in touch with devotional service, sadhana bhakti, sadhana means practice, and it essentially means there's a connotation of force. You're being forced to do something so that you could practice something, so that you can become something after the practice. The practice is going to yield fruits. So you're going to force yourself. And what are you going to force yourself now? You are going to be retrained and reconditioned to believe that this is exactly who you are because that's the truth. And then once you get trained, it becomes a part of our own life. A beautiful example. I remember this. I've shared this before. I was watching a documentary of the West Point Academy for Army. And in the West Point Academy, you have 18-year-olds being recruited. And these 18-year-olds have had absolutely no form, no structure, no discipline. They bring these guys in and they give them intense form, intense structure. An 18-year-old is being trained over a period of 4 years, I believe. And what comes out after 4 years? The fellow has assumed the identity of being a soldier of the US Army. He has assumed an identity of being a soldier of the US Army who is ready to go to the battlefield and is ready to take a bullet. He is being trained in 4 years from being completely undisciplined, 18-year-old, to take a bullet for his country. And he does so. And he thinks that's the greatest thing on existence. Can you believe a shift in consciousness that has to occur in those 4 years where someone is being taken from the basics and he's being trained in, he's being imbibed, he's being given an identity that you belong to the country. You are the country's property. You should go and you should take a bullet for the country if need be, and that is your job. And you're not going to be paid super. Right? The army pays reasonably well, but then, it's not like you have $1 million. They're not mercenaries. They get paid reasonably well. But how do you train someone to take on the identity where they can go even kill themselves for the country? Now, this is an identity that is actually formed. And this identity did not exist before they went into the academy. They walk out with this identity that I can do this. Right? Now, the same process is being applied in sadhana bhakti, where we have rigors of waking up at a certain time, dressing in a certain way, eating and not eating in certain things, right? And we also have a rigor of being able to render service and so on and so forth. But as we render service and we engage in all these activities, we are basically awakening our original consciousness. We are remembering who we are. You realize what I'm saying? As we go through these practices, we are awakening our original consciousness. We are remembering who we are. And that allows us, basically, to go back in a particular time frame. This is the beginning. This is sadhana bhakti. Right? So this is the process. So what are we reaching for? We are reaching the platform where we want to be able to keep Krishna in the center, take decisions, and our decision making would come in such a way that we would say that we would take no decisions that are unfavorable to Krishna consciousness. This is the third chapter. Until such time we reach that consciousness, until such time we have desires that distract us, these are called anarthas. Artha is that which has meaning. Sanskrit we say arth is meaning. Anartha is that which has no meaning. Until such time we discard unwanted aspirations that are based purely on the needs of the body and needs of the mind. Until such time we discard those, we will never be able to reach the platform of saying, Krishna, I exist for you. The third chapter is all about reaching this platform of being able to discard any other identity which is forcing itself upon us, which is taking us away from a focus on service to Krishna's pleasure. Okay, you should. The whole purpose of being able to take right decisions, and how can you even take a right decision? Your right decision is going to be only based on the fact that you can keep Krishna in the center. Krishna, I'm rendering devotional service to you in a certain way today. I want to be able to continue it. I want to be able to improve upon it. How can I associate better? How can I read better? How can I chant better? How can I serve better? You are going to take these considerations into account while forming any other decision. Right? If I move from this city to a different place, will I be able to associate? Will I be able to read? Will I be able to chant? Will I be able to serve? Take a decision. The job which I am looking for right now, working in right now, allows me to serve better. The next job that I'm getting is promising me a raise of an X amount of dollars, which is good. But will that raise and that job allow me to continue to serve better, continue to hear, continue to chant, continue to be able to associate? Take a decision. Because if you just focus on taking a decision just based on a job, you will be taking a wrong decision. Because now you're not taking into consideration the needs of the soul. So you are taking a decision now based on the needs of the soul. You prioritize based on that, and then your decision would be favorable. You will yield results right away. You don't have to wait for 10 years. Right? Because if you are searching for happiness and pleasure at the physical and the mental level, and then you also have the spiritual level of happiness. If you are able to get the spiritual level of happiness, then you don't have to worry about the mental and the physical level as much. You know, as long as it is simple and you can maintain things, you're okay. Abs- Fundamentally, yes, because fundamentally it is about every decision that we have the ability to make, including something as simple as driving and then, someone cutting you off. You can get completely worked up about it, or you can understand that it is okay, it's an incident, I have better things to do, and you can continue going towards your destination, understanding that things could have been worse. There could have been an accident. So it practically means that your existence is going to revolve around the greatest priority of your life, which is being able to serve the Lord. the fundamental beginning, or what we can say is the first step one should take in the process of Krishna consciousness or Bhakti Yoga would be, and this is based on the scripture, is that you honor food which has been offered to the Lord, prasad, and then you chant His holy names. Right? Sevon mukehi jihva adav. Jihva is the tongue. Adav means beginning. So we begin service by controlling the tongue. We begin service by involving and engaging the tongue in the service of the Lord. So the fundamental recommendation is you start chanting His holy names. Because when you start chanting His holy names and you start focusing on controlling your food habits, because essentially what goes in is what is going to manifest itself in terms of a thought process, in terms of how we are and who we are. We are what we eat is the expression. So it starts with get close to Krishna on an activity that you perform thrice a day, which is eating. Right? Bring your food, give it to Krishna, request Him to please accept it, and then you accept it as His mercy. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because anything you bring in touch with Krishna is going to be transformed into spirit, and anything which is spiritual, which is going to come in touch with you, is going to destroy our material consciousness. So essentially, we are going to purify our existence by purifying our tongue, and then we're going to chant, and that begins devotional service. In reality, there's no need for anything else, because if you do these two things, everything else that you need to do would manifest themselves automatically. Because keeping and chanting the Lord's names is the most powerful means of deliverance in this particular age. It's recommended. So that's the reason why there's such an emphasis on chanting of the holy names. This whole movement is about the glorification. It is about kirtan. Shravanam, you hear, and then you act kirtan. Right? So Shravanam, you come here and you're hearing, and then you step out and you're going to act based on what you hear, which is kirtan. And that action need not necessarily be that you are singing the Lord's bhajans or whatsoever. It could be the actions that you do on a day-to-day basis, whilst keeping in mind that you are a servant of the Lord, what is going to be favorable for the most important thing in my life. We do that all the time. Every one of us has something which we are very, we hold dear. We take decisions based on what is very dear to us. So the whole idea is that in reality, there's nothing more important than us being close to the Lord and serving Him, because that is who we are. We may not recognize it apparently because we are in some kind of an amnesia, but as years progress, we come out of it, we recognize it. So we start taking that into account and we start keeping Him in the center, we start taking decisions based on that. That's what this is about. Yes, and that is the third chapter, because the more and more and more we get trained to take decisions based on keeping Krishna in the center, and we reach a point where we never ever take decisions based on anything other than keeping Krishna in the center. That point, we become qualified to go to the next level. And what is the next level? The whole purpose of any religion is to teach us so that we would know who we are, we would know who is God, we would know our relationship, and we would be able to act in that relationship. That's the purpose of Christianity, that is the purpose of Islam, Hinduism, Krishna consciousness, whatsoever. If a religion or a bona fide practice is not leading you towards such consciousness of understanding who we are at the deepest level, then such a practice has to be rejected. That's the conclusion of the scripture. Because it's not doing its job. It is supposed to awaken the spirit, which is the whole topic of self-realization. You ought to be knowing who you are. So when you reach a point where every decision is being taken based on the fact that this is going to give pleasure to Krishna, at that point, it starts being revealed to us as to who we are in relationship to Krishna in the spiritual realm. The revelations start coming. It's an automatic process. The process of chanting, the process of association. What happens? When you associate with devotees, they enthuse you to chant better. You chant nicely, you are basically requesting the Lord, engage me in your service. So He gives you an opportunity to serve. And when you serve, you experience the philosophy. I'm talking now and I'm giving you knowledge. But you take this knowledge and you act upon it, you start having experiences. So Gyan becomes Vigyan when you practice it. So you chant, you get an opportunity for service. When you get an opportunity for service, you reinforce your faith because now you're experiencing what is being spoken. There's only so much which can be shared, but when you start experiencing it, your faith becomes stronger. So this whole process of the third chapter, Srila Rupa Goswami called it Anartha Nivrti. This is Anartha Nivrti in different stages. Anartha Nivrti. Nivrti essentially means to be free from desires that have no meaning. And what has no meaning? That if you take a decision based on the body, it's meaningless because this body is already dead. Isn't it just time which is separating this body to be interred? This is a dead body for all practical purposes. It's just time that is separating us. When we take a decision just based on a dead body, which is going to be buried or it's going to be burnt, then we are taking a decision which is surely in ignorance. So we start moving and then we reach a point of called, then we have this point called Nishta, which is in the process. Ado Shraddha, Tataha, Sadhu Sango, Bhajana Kriya, where you are with sadhus, in the Sangha of sadhus, you perform bhajana, you cannot perform it alone. You have to perform it in the Sangha of sadhus. Why? Because the primary purpose is for us to be able to understand who we are and for us to be able to purify ourselves of our existence. Is when we face others, we see our consciousness. The way we judge others is based on what is inside. Yes. See, here's the deal. Krishna knows for sure, much better than any of us, that unless he gives us little experiences on the way, we would not be enthused. Krishna consciousness is like climbing a mountain. So you climb and then you reach a certain ledge. You feel great. I've covered this distance. Then you take a pause and you probably walk a little bit. Again, you start climbing. Again, you reach a ledge. You walk a bit. Again, you start climbing. So each and every time there is a certain milestone. And these milestones are experienced. It is not something which is inert. It's not an existence where, oh, it's not like I have to become a pure devotee. I have to constantly think of Krishna. And it has to happen in this lifetime. But how is it going to happen? What is going to be in the interim? There are going to be experiences, one after the other, which will reinforce the faith. But the faith will only get reinforced when there's service. Why? Because the whole philosophy is about keeping Krishna in the center and giving pleasure to Krishna's senses. So the more and more we practice giving pleasure to Krishna's senses, the more and more we will realize who we are. The identity gets getting reinforced. It's like a thief. It's a contradictory example. It's like a thief. He is just planning now. I must do this, I must do this, I must do that, I must go and rob from this particular bank. Until he robs from that particular bank, he is only planning. But the day he robs successfully and he runs away, he becomes a bank robber. Now there's a very deep samskara within. I have robbed, I have become successful, I know exactly what to do next. Right? There's a little bit of samskara, there's an impression once that activity is done. So similarly, in devotional service, you basically can continuously remain on the theoretical platform without serving. You will never be able to make progress. But the moment you start serving, you automatically start experiencing what you have learned, and that reinforces the identity of being a servant. Every time you serve, it reinforces the identity of being a servant. Do you understand? That's how it works. What is it which will help you realize that you're making progress and Krishna is looking at you. Exactly. So when we say, Krishna, give me mercy, Bhagwan, Kripa Karo, right? What are we actually asking for? We are basically saying that I am your servant, I have forgotten you, I want to remember you, I want to constantly remember you because that's my position. Kripa Karo, have mercy on me so that I would be able to reach a position where I can remember you constantly. So when his kripa comes, it essentially means that he is giving us opportunities where the more and more and more we are able to keep him in the center, the more and more and more we have the opportunity to look around the world and understand everything from his perspective. Then kripa is coming through. Right? Kripa is coming through because he is making arrangements for us to come closer. See, that's the beauty. So this way one understands that no matter what happens in life, if you have the opportunity to come closer, then you are able to appreciate. So devotees are able to see, okay, this challenge comes and this challenge is helping me see things a little differently. Okay, so now we are understanding that in 3 chapters and the 3rd chapter specifically, if we do not realize the importance of being able to keep Krishna in the center, being able to work with each other, being able to help each other and understand how to keep Krishna in the center in our lives, even though it's quite complex, how to constantly take decisions based on keeping him in the center. The 3rd chapter, if you achieve perfection, then the 4th chapter is revealed. And what is the 4th chapter? Transcendental knowledge. There is no such thing as transcendental knowledge till such time you figure out how to manage life by keeping Krishna in the center. See, Krishna is a person. He is not impersonal. He has an impersonal feature, but he is a person. So why would he respond unless he is really needed? Right? Even as human beings, we recognize that we are in surroundings where people don't really need us. We wouldn't want to remain there for long. We just want to run away. Why would Krishna come in and make his presence felt when we are not sending a strong signal that Krishna, we need you to be here, please? He's a person. That goes even while you're chanting. While we are chanting, are we calling out the holy names with concentration? Or are we calling out the holy names because we have to call out the holy names? That is better than not calling out the holy names. At least practicing something. Doesn't matter. Because ultimately it would turn into reality. But are we really calling out the holy names? Because Krishna comes into the atmosphere. Imagine someone calling you and then after they call you, they ignore you. How would you feel? It is the same position with Krishna that you chant his holy names and then you don't chant seriously. You just casually chant and then he comes into the atmosphere and then you're doing something else. Some people chant while watching TV. I don't know how they do it. I've heard this. Some people chant while watching TV. Some people chant while browsing. They don't realize that Krishna is coming there and he's saying, you call me and look, what are you doing now? What kind of nonsense is this? That you call me and you're engaging in something else altogether. So Krishna is a person. We got to remember that that's the whole aspect of devotional service. You are rendering service to a person who has immense, intense love for us. And he wants to have an exchange of love. He has expectations. And we should be careful. So that's what we are learning when we keep a deity at home. We are fundamentally learning how to treat Krishna, the person, if he were to be at home. You know, for instance, can I just shut down the heat in the section of the house where the deities are? Just because I'm sleeping elsewhere where it's warm? I don't want, the lower floor to be warm as well because I got to pay the bills. Then you start becoming conscious, oh, the deity is a person. I want to offer milk to Krishna. Has it simmered down? Has it become warm? It's super hot milk. How can you offer it to a person? They could scald themselves, they could burn themselves. You become conscious. These are signs of advancement. The more you become conscious of Krishna, the person, the more it means that we are coming out of our amnesia. It does not come easily because initially it is an impersonal feeling. It is about us. How can I feed myself? Right? Dhanodar Maharaj, I was in a class with him, and he was teaching the principle of Namaste to a group of Westerners. And he said, Namaste is normally what we think of is this: how can I gratify my senses with my hands? Namaste essentially means that we are giving it to the person in front of us, saying, I'm ready to serve you. Here are my hands. So you are fundamentally looking at the other person, you're becoming conscious of the other person, and then you're saying, I want to serve you. These hands, which were taking care of myself, now these hands should take care of you. These hands are yours. Right. So we move away from body consciousness by bringing in Krishna consciousness. That's what this is all about. Right. And this is not a process which is, I would say, this is a process which is scientific. It is scientific because it really doesn't matter as to who takes it up. The results will follow if you take it up seriously. Absolutely, because no matter which practice of yoga you go to, there's always a fundamental requirement of being able to control the mind. So here, what we do is essentially we control our consciousness by ingesting only food that's been connected to Krishna, which allows us primarily to stay focused, number one. Number two, while we chant, our entire energy is focused on hearing the mantra. So you don't even need to pay attention to visualization or remembering. You just pay attention to ucharan, which is pronunciation, and hearing. So when we pay attention to pronunciation and hearing, automatically when three senses are involved, you're holding the mala, you're speaking the mantra audibly, not loudly, but so that you can hear it, and your ears are trained to focus on the mantra. You have three senses out of five covered. It automatically subdues the mind after a while. It takes practice. So you choose an appropriate time to engage in this, which is 4 o'clock in the morning, because the atmosphere at that time is sublime and you can engage in that practice. Okay, so you choose an appropriate time. So that's the reason why sadhana is done at Brahma Muhurta, because the quality of time during the Brahma Muhurta and the devatas who are in charge are in the mode of goodness and they help you. Mid-afternoon, there's passion, right? As the night progresses, there's ignorance. Early in the morning, there's goodness and it helps you. So that's the beginning of the fourth chapter, transcendental knowledge. Now, how many of you are practicing keeping Krishna in the center in terms of your decision making? We spent a good 2 months on this chapter, I would think. More than that. How many of you are practicing this actively? You are. Thank you. It's very encouraging, where you have to be able to practice on a daily basis. Daily basis. And also take inventory of the mind. How do you realize that you're making progress is where we start looking at what's going on in the mind. The mind is making hundreds of demands. How many of those demands are we acceding to? Are we rejecting those that are just connected to the body? Are we taking a look to see which one of these demands am I meeting which are conducive for my Krishna consciousness? Because you actively have to manage your sadhana. there's a little bit of management required here where we have to take inventory. What is going on? Observe what is going on in the mind. What kind of desires are building so that we could divert it. Bring Krishna into the center. Am I taking decisions which are conducive for the soul? Start meditating on it. The results are something worth, I can say, dying for. Right? Because, bit up, keeping it on the foot. Right? So we should start actively practicing that. So next week we will begin the 4th chapter. I would like you to read the 4th chapter before we begin the 4th chapter. And next week we would take it. I would be going in a much faster pace than I did the 3rd chapter. The 3rd chapter is extremely important. Write it down. Keep it as a principle. Put it down on a piece of paper. Stick it on a mirror wherever you are. Look at it. That you have to constantly practice taking decisions based on what is favorable. Because that's going to help you. Right. I'll stop here. Yes. Well, the way we take a decision is, yes, you'll have to pass it and put it through a grid. Is it helpful in helping me chant better? Is it helpful in helping me read better? Is it going to favorably allow me to associate? Is it going to favorably allow me to serve? You can ask these questions to yourself when you take a decision. And the answers would be able to guide you on whether the decision can be taken or cannot be taken. However, if those answers, even then, we feel that yes, all this could be helped, but we still want to be sure, we also offer a prayer to Krishna that I'm taking this decision, but I really want to surrender, I really want to ensure that I'm your servant, I want to be able to serve you better. If you believe that this decision is not favorable for me, feel free to sabotage it. Sabotage it. Destroy it. No problem. I'm taking a decision. This is a very powerful prayer if you can afford to do it. Get up in the morning and tell Krishna that let all the decisions that I take today, which are not in line with your service, be sabotaged. Make that prayer. Then you would realize that you are protected because you're sincerely making a plea. Krishna, help me. My decision making is flawed. I cannot take a proper decision. I'm not sincere. But I know from hearing that I need to take a proper decision. I know from hearing from the Shastra that I need to be able to keep you in the center. Please, Krishna, if I'm taking a decision which is not in line, which is not going to allow you to remain in the center of my life, let this decision be sabotaged. Be brave in making that prayer. Because remember this, we cannot cheat in Krishna consciousness because Krishna is in the heart. So we make a statement to him that Krishna, I really need you. Then we make good by saying, I really need you, Krishna. I have already made those arrangements. I'm trying to make improvements. Do whatever is required from your side, Krishna, so that I may be able to serve you better. You can make personal prayers. Yes. That is the whole point, because exactly what we do is that we constantly are trying to be able to chant better. We constantly are being able to read better. Reading better essentially not means reading volumes. Reading better means we are reading and we are applying. We are able to associate, we are able to serve. These are the fundamental pillars of devotional service. Of course, reading provides and controls the intelligence, and intelligence can control the mind favorably. Reading gives you the ability to take decisions. That's the whole purpose. So what the books do, this is a passive form. Why is it passive? Because you got to pick it up. You got to open the pages. You got to put the effort to read. While we speak in the classes, this is the active form of sharing Shastra, where you are able to hear realizations, you are able to hear the experiences that come out of practice from the book. So we make a combination of both for us to be able to follow the book through classes, and then you act on the knowledge. Yes, fundamentally, the knowledge is meant to prepare us for the experiences. You had something? When to stop? Well, we fundamentally figure out the same. See, the same. You can put this to the same decision-making process, right? Whatever we are trying, we try, and we sincerely try. Krishna consciousness does not mean that you do not work. Krishna consciousness does not mean you become inefficient. Krishna consciousness does not mean that you remain inactive and expect Krishna to take all decisions for you. Krishna consciousness means you do whatever it takes for you to do it right. Also accepting the fact that even though you have tried your best, the results are not controlled by you. And the results can be the complete opposite of what you expect. So the whole process is for us to be able to accept those results as mercy and have the courage to act upon it. Right? That's what it is. So, yeah. You can try. There's nothing wrong. See, there's nothing wrong. But you have to make a decision on what you're trying for. What is it which you're really asking for? Are you asking only for a better job, which is going to pay you more, going to give you better opportunities, but which can jeopardize other aspects of your life? So you have to be able to take a decision based on what you're asking for. You can try. See, if you're going to work 8 hours in a day, and there is a better job which pays you more for the same 8 hours, nothing wrong in trying for that. But a decision has to be taken at the time as to whether that shift and the change is going to be favorable and it is going to allow me to maintain my lifestyle of being able to keep Krishna in the center. What if that extra raise or the money that's going to come in out of the job practically takes you away from the family, takes you away from everything you do, and you end up becoming, just a slave for the company or the organization or the firm? Because these days that's a very, very high prospect, because there's constantly a smaller workforce and wanting to do more with less people. So there's always this prospect. So you'll have to be able to balance out what your life decisions are. Nothing wrong in trying. See, nothing wrong in trying. No harm. Because we don't want, again, to be guessing Krishna's plans either. We do what we think is best based on what is going to be favorable for Krishna consciousness, and you leave the results to him and learn to accept the results that come through without questioning. That's the beauty of it. That's very good. So Krishna helps you that way. Yeah, if we keep him in the center, then everything becomes very smooth. And bigger things. Just to maintain that. Very good point. This is exactly what I was saying, that we create so many artificial dependencies, and we end up working for all of those and being stressed out trying to maintain something which you really don't need in the first place, and then you're constantly struggling to keep Krishna in the center, which is the reason why the third chapter is so important, because you really have to take mastery of that. Yeah. Very different. Very different. Absolutely. Can you imagine this? I keep reading it. I get very astonished. When Apple, the computer company, they release a new iPhone, you have people standing outside the door at 12 midnight. I can never figure this out because I could never understand this concept of pre-ordering phones, and people are standing out there at midnight to buy a phone that you end up buying, and they give you a discount for, 4 months down the line or 2 months down the line. It's incredible about how people are so geared into consumerism where they feel that this is going to give me happiness. I'm unhappy. The mind is telling them, get that and you're going to be thrilled. And then they go get that and yet they're not thrilled. So it's almost like the mind is constantly pushing them, do this, do that, do this, do that. You're going to become happy. And you end up doing it. And that's how the world goes around. It's like India is catching up in the trend. Big time. India is catching up a lot. I mean, India is becoming, or rather, it has become like the States, where it's all about commodities, it's all about consumerism. Now there's an intense focus on what I can buy and what I cannot buy. The lifestyle in India, I suppose, is almost like it is here. Very competitive, and very challenging. So, absolutely. See, there was this wonderful. I don't know if anybody has heard this. Very good points. There was this devotee in the Boston Temple, and he got involved in Krishna consciousness. He came into the Boston Temple, and then he suddenly found, it happens when he moved into the temple. He was a Westerner. He moved into the temple, and he was in the temple for a while, and then he started figuring out that there are so many other things that I left behind. I got to go out again and check it out. So he came out again of the temple, and he went back to the life that he had before, and he tried doing things that he was doing before, and he found that there was absolutely no happiness whatsoever. But then he remembered from the classes, because the Boston Temple started receiving phone calls, and this person who used to call used to be very abusive. They just used to call, they used to yell bad names and so on, they used to put the phone down. This used to happen continuously, and then they found out that this was this devotee. He heard in the classes that if you offend devotees, Krishna will throw you out of the movement. So he went out and he tried enjoying, and he could not enjoy. He thought, let me call the temple so that Krishna throws me out and I'll be able to enjoy. Right? I mean, of course, he came back to the movement, but then the point is, it's incredible that you come in touch with Krishna. There's such a dramatic effect because the holy name enters a being. It destroys matter, which is situated in the heart. It devastates matter, that you are not the same person that you were before you walked into a temple. Really? It becomes very difficult. The Shravanananda Prabhu used to attend parties, but he used to take along a table, he used to take the books, and people used to get drunk, but they used to end up buying Srila Prabhupada's books because, you have this little book table, which is very powerful. He used to go with his books and everything. He's a wonderful soul, and he used to sell books in the party. But you are right, because our life, which fundamentally tells you that we have been pretending to be something that we are not, and then you come into Krishna consciousness, you realize that this is the real thing, and then no matter wherever you go, you feel you can't fit in. That's it. This is your real thing, because this is the real deal. It has such a profound effect. Uh, Srila Prabhupada was asked by the reporters saying, can you perform miracles? And Srila Prabhupada said yes. He pointed to all the sannyasi disciples he had. They're all this 25, 30-year-old American devotees, like completely shaved up in saffron, holding the danda and so on, sitting behind him. That this is my miracle. They were all having all kinds of habits and all kinds of backgrounds. They did not know anything about the Vedic paradigm. They did not know Krishna. This is the miracle that we have performed by giving them Krishna consciousness. Look at them now. They are brahmanas, pure brahmanas. Yes. So this is a miracle, because you come in touch with Krishna, he just devastates. Right? There's a saying that when he enters the battlefield, everybody has to just leave, because there's no chance when Krishna enters the battlefield. Right? Krishna enters the battlefield, the holy name enters, non-different from Krishna, no chance. You have to move away. So it devastates our consciousness, which is so powerful. But I really liked your point, very, very nice, enlivening. Thank you. So were you exposed before to Krishna consciousness? Oh, very nice. Because I guess, there's always this phase in life when things start. So absolutely. Yeah, that's what we call that tough love. Yeah, that's what it is. It is tough love. Very good point. Good realization. I guess you have been reading. And so, very nice. So I think we'll stop here, because we'll offer these prasad. You want to close the altar? Oh, really? Oh, I forgot about.